Welcome back to another episode of the Casey Campbell Podcast. Casey Campbell with you, of course, and we are pleased to be joined. Yeah, we're talking racing today because Nathan Solomon's on the podcast, of course, of the managing editor of the Podium Finish. How's it going, buddy? How are you?
Yo, what's going on? It's good to be back. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, it's been a while since you've been on here. But it is always good to have you back. And when you are here, you are usually something big happens. And of course, we had the 2024 NASCAR schedule released um, for the Cup, Xfinity, and Truck Series. Some changes in all three of them. Let's kind of hit. Where do you want? You can. Where should we start, Nathan?
Where do you want to start? I'm
You
I'm
know what?
I'm on the program. I'm along for the ride here.
You're always along for the ride when you're on here. Um, let's start with we'll work our way up. We'll get the minor changes out of the way. Let's start with trucks. Your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, pretty much the same as 2023, right? I mean, the only significant change here is Mid Ohio is off and a second Martinsville date is on. So, last year, or I guess this year, 2023, the only one race at Martinsville for the Truck Series, and that came in the spring. In the past, I believe it had always been in the fall, but I think these last 2 years now, the fall date has kind of gotten taken away and gotten moved somewhere else. But that fall date is now back, and I love how Martinsville sets up the championship for all three series now. I hate that it's at the expense of Mid Ohio. I think Mid Ohio certainly adds something to the Truck Series schedule. Now I think we only have two road courses, or maybe just one road course. I'm,
Yeah,
I'm
just
looking through this.
one quota.
Yeah, that's kind of surprising. I mean, with the shift that we've seen from NASCAR trying to add more road courses, kind of weird that we only have one road course in the truck schedule, and it's race number 5. So, I know Mid Ohio. It sounds like they're going to repave. It sounds like the plan is to host NASCAR again in 2025, but definitely a little disappointing to not see that venue on the schedule because it feels like whenever NASCAR is there, whether it be Xfinity in the past or the trucks these last couple of years, they put on a pretty good show. But otherwise, a pretty much cut and dry, similar is this year. I know the playoff tracks, just a slight shift there. I mean, Milwaukee starts off the playoffs now, and Richmond moves up back to the regular season finale. But otherwise, it's pretty much the same as last year or this year. I keep saying last year, this year.
Yeah, Richmond was the cutoff race. Actually, I believe this year too. And by the way, I believe it was your outlet that reported the Mid Ohio news. So yeah, it sounds like yeah, I think 2020, and obviously I was there the last 2 years. So I mean, it's a good track for them. I know that I think first time since 2012 that Mid Ohio has not been on NASCAR schedule. Obviously, they'll that weekend that they usually typically have it, IndyCar will be there for their weekend. So one other change I do want to mention that we'll obviously talk about this when the Cup schedule we get to that, but two Bristol dates, but no dirt race for the trucks for the first time since 2012 either.
Yeah, and there's a couple seasons, I think at least 2021, I think it was, or maybe it was last year. There's two dirt races on the truck schedule, and I think it was that way for a couple of years. They had Knoxville and they had the Bristol dirt race. So yeah, right now we're not seeing any of the three main touring series go onto dirt. I mean, I'm sure the expectation is that ARCA will have at least one dirt race on their schedule. I know that schedule has not been released yet, but I'd imagine that at least one dirt race will be on the calendar in 2024 there. But I know Ben Kennedy has not ruled out a return to dirt in the future, whether it be at Bristol or whether it be at a natural dirt track like Knoxville or Eldora. So I think it could just be a temporary move for no dirt period. I'd rather they go to an actual dirt track compared to Bristol, but right now just no dirt on the NASCAR schedule right now, which personally that's fine by me. I know there's some people that would prefer to see some dirt on the schedule, but that's my personal preference.
Yeah, I mean, if you ask, I don't know, I'm a little indifferent on it, but obviously, if you want it like Eric Estep does, or you absolutely don't like it like Jeff Gluck does, who knows what could happen? But yeah, no dirt on either of the top three touring series. Yeah, there will be at least two dirt races on the ARCA schedule because of course you got Springfield and DuQuoin. and obviously those two have been on the schedule since I believe the 50s. So, but yeah, so that is the truck schedule. I want to quickly gloss over the Xfinity. I want to talk about the Xfinity schedule before we get to all of the big changes that we're going to talk about with the Cup schedule. I know we'll obviously talk about all the big changes when we get to Cup, but Xfinity really kind of stays the same. Obviously, in this case, no Road America on the schedule, and then Talladega gets added to the playoffs. But other than those two changes, everything kind of stays the same there too.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, you said it right there. Those are really the only significant changes on the Xfinity side of things outside of moving some dates around. Like obviously those dates get moved around as the Cup dates get moved around since Xfinity, they support Cup almost every week. So those changes come with Cup. Obviously, we'll unpack it a little bit more when we get to Cup in a minute. But Iowa, of course, is back on the Xfinity schedule. So essentially, Road America shifts to Iowa. Those two dates or tracks kind of swap. But yeah, other than that, I mean, the track layout or the track map pretty much the same. You mentioned Talladega into the playoffs. That certainly shifts the approach for some of these teams. I know a lot of it was kind of like either you loved it or you hated it, not having Talladega in the Xfinity Series playoffs from a team perspective, like last week. But it kind of gives some of the underfunded teams a chance, like a Jordan Anderson Racing, like having that back on the playoff schedule. I'm sure they would have loved to have it last week. So, but yeah, not a ton of changes on the Xfinity Series schedule in terms of like sweeping changes outside of like I said, following wherever Cup goes.
Yeah. Okay, so obviously there are obviously the big sweeping changes, but I told you we'd save them all for the big Cup schedule for sure. Now we'll kind of dive into where everything's going to go. Kind of starting out. I'll just kind of start from the top here. We kind of work backwards. Um, with this schedule. So, we went from start with trucks and we go, all the way to Cup. Of course, February 4th, we start with the Clash. Third straight year in a row. What are your thoughts on that? Of course, this is the third year in a row we're doing this.
Yeah, I like it. I mean, it's different. It's outside of the box, right? It's something that you wouldn't expect to necessarily happen. You wouldn't expect for a NASCAR race to happen in a football stadium. So why not keep doing it? It's been successful. I had the pleasure and was fortunate enough to attend the first Clash, and I really enjoyed it. I think that race is more targeted for a fan experience type race versus a TV race, but also knowing how much Fox will promote it, a lot of people will tune in on Fox just because it's kind of that gap between the AFC and NFC Championship week and the Super Bowl. That kind of takes that NFL slot right on TV, and the race fans, they've been waiting 3 months for NASCAR to be back, so of course they're going to watch. So I like it. I think I don't know how much longer we're going to do the Clash in LA, but I think this has been really successful so far these first couple of years, and I'd imagine it being another really good turnout both in person at the race as well as on TV.
Yeah, for sure. It's definitely going to be interesting to see how that goes. And it's a big few weeks for Fox. Of course, you got the NFC Championship game the week before that. Then you got the LA Clash and the gap week between the championship games and the Super Bowl. And then of course you got the Super Bowl and then leading into the Daytona 500. So a big few weeks for the big networks. So that should be fun there. And then of course on Thursday you got the dual at Daytona. And then, of course, February 18th, season kicks off with the Daytona 500, 2:30 on Fox, 2:30 p.m. on Fox. And then the biggest change is Atlanta is back to that second date in the season. I know a lot of people were talking about that. Yeah. So, starting off the season with two drafting tracks, I've heard a lot of people are not fans of it, but what's this going to be like?
It's smart because, well, obviously I think going to Georgia at that time of year, it's a little tough with weather, but the Daytona 500 is the most watched race of the year. 8, 9, 10 million people will sit down and watch that race from start to finish because from a casual perspective, super speedway racing and drafting racing is probably the most favorable type of racing to watch from those casuals. So I think by putting back-to-back drafting tracks like that, I think NASCAR is thinking, okay, we can build more momentum from the first race of the season to the second race of the season. And, the first couple months of the year are typically the most watched races of the year because they're competing against fewer sports and, less other things. So I think by putting back-to-back drafting tracks, it may allow NASCAR to continue a little bit more momentum on the TV side and maybe carry that a little bit further into the spring. So I think it's really, really smart from a TV perspective.
Yeah. And of course, Sunday, Sunday 3 p.m. Then we're the 2 week West Coast swing. Of course, Auto Club not on the schedule anymore. Las Vegas and Phoenix. Bristol is back on the concrete, as we said earlier. That'll be March 17th at 3:30. Coda is back on the schedule as well. They follow on March 24th, and then the Easter race returns. But this year, it will be at Richmond Raceway. It'll be a Sunday night race on Fox. I know you've been to Richmond many, many times. What's that race going to be like?
I don't love it. I really don't. I think there's better venues to like Richmond has. Let's finding the best way to put this. Richmond has not put on the best on track product the last couple of years. That's certainly not been a secret within the industry. This car in particular has really struggled with Richmond on the Cup side, but also you haven't really seen the best races from an Xfinity in truck perspective either. So I don't love making this the Easter race, and because primetime race, it's kind of really your only thing on that day, except maybe opening weekend of baseball. There's gonna be a lot of eyes on the sport that weekend. I don't love going to Richmond for your Easter race. I would have rather gone to like make North Wilkesboro points paying race, or even put Bristol still as your Easter night race, but on the concrete. But I think maybe that takes away from the summer night race. I don't know, but I don't love Richmond as the at night. I mean, I get it. If it's going to be on Easter, it's not going to be during the day. You're going to kind of want fans to be able to have their day before kind of going to the racetrack, and have your crew guys and your teams to be able to go home and only have like a 30-minute flight north on race day to get back to the track. But I have low expectations for that being a good race unless they make sweeping changes with this car in the offseason.
Yeah. All right. So after Richmond, we go to Martinsville, and then followed by another big change. Texas moves from the playoffs to the spring. So of course they are there. So yeah, it's gonna be interesting to see how that's going to go. Then of course Talladega and Dover to finish out the month of April. Then we get into May. We have Kansas, Darlington, the throwback weekend. North Wilkesboro is once again the all-star race. Then, of course, it's the Coke 600 on May 26th, and then followed by Gateway and Sonoma. And then heading into that, I know you alluded to it, Iowa Speedway. Of course, for first time ever that it's on the Cup Series schedule. That, of course, kicks off the NBC portion of the season. That, of course, is at 7 p.m. on USA. Yeah, I know a lot of people have been wanting Iowa to come on the schedule. I guess you wanted it, you got it, and we'll have to see how this one goes.
Yeah, I'm happy to see Iowa on the schedule. I mean, it's been owned by NASCAR for I think 10 years now. So really cool that racetrack gets another date. Again, I think it is also going to be a night race. I think that could, because it's a 7/8 racetrack, I think it could be challenging from the next gen perspective. It could be a really good Xfinity race, and I think it will be a really good Xfinity race because it always has been good there. Remember, Iowa used to be a staple on both the truck and Xfinity Series schedule before COVID. We're supposed to go there in 2020. Races got moved because of the pandemic, but now we've got Xfinity and Cup there, and the Xfinity race is the Xfinity is an afternoon race, so that should be fine. But I'm interested to see how the next gen car will race there. I'd like Iowa to be permanent. Certainly no secret, though, that the Iowa date likely happened because Montreal did not happen. I think that was kind of the big holdout on why the schedule took so long to get released, because the plan, I think, or the hope at least, was that they were going to get Montreal done, get it on the schedule they weren't able to do that. They added Iowa. So I'd love in a perfect world where we could get Iowa and Montreal on the schedule in 2025. I hope Iowa stays for a very long time, and I hope we're wrong about how this car will race on that track. But who knows? Maybe they could make some changes. Maybe they could make the tires a little less wide. They could add some more horsepower to the cars. Those conversations could be happening internally about 2024, but just not sure how the next gen car is going to race there.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's definitely going to be interesting to see how they do at Iowa. Of course, ARCA will also be there as well. I think we glossed over this. Missed a couple things while I was going through that. The All-Star race back at North Wilkesboro, and then your thoughts on Texas moving in the spring.
Yeah, I mean, I would prefer North Wilkesboro to actually be a points race. I think it's cool that it's still the All Star race, but I know they're repaving it, so maybe it's worth giving it one more year as an exhibition race just to see how the new surface pans out. But nonetheless, I'm glad it's on the schedule. Period. And then Texas, that was not really a secret, or not a very well kept secret that race is going to get moved to the spring. It's again not been a very racy car or not been a very racy track for any series that's gone there. At least on the NASCAR side, we've seen some good IndyCar races, but I think it's better in the spring. It should be a little bit cooler there. I mean, it has been a scorcher the last couple of years in the playoffs. So I think probably the best thing that could have happened is that date gets moved to the spring, and there's only one date in general. And so it'll be a triple header weekend. Fans will certainly get their money's worth, excuse me. I know that's also been a track that struggled with attendance, so I think maybe by moving it just to one date, they could also get that attendance number peaked back up, especially because in April you're not competing with like football either.
Yeah. And of course, also not unrelated to NASCAR, but IndyCar will not be going to Texas this year. So because of that. All right, let's go. Let's continue with the schedule. New Hampshire moves. Okay, let's get your thoughts on this. Of course, New Hampshire moves to June. Obviously, you are very familiar with that place as well. Of course, you've been up there the last few years. Your thoughts on that, and yeah,
Yeah, I mean that's just kind of no choice. That race basically came at the expense of the Olympic break.
yeah,
I
a
mean,
little bit.
you saw Pocono get slid up a week. I mean, I know we'll get into it too, but Pocono slides up a week and basically takes New Hampshire's spot, and then New Hampshire gets bumped up a few weeks. So no, I don't hate it. I mean, it honestly doesn't really matter where it is in the schedule as long as it's like in the summer. I don't think that'll really change how things are how the race kind of plays out there.
Yeah. All right. Well, as you said, of course, New Hampshire will be June 23rd. Nashville will follow that on June 30th, and of course, will be on NBC. Big change there. That is a 3:30 p.m. race. The Chicago Street Course is back once again, July 7th at 4:30 on NBC. So we'll have to see how that goes. As you mentioned, Pocono is moved up from a few weeks from its previous date this year, I should say. And then, of course, the big one, July 21st, return to the Brickyard 400 on the Indy Oval. Let's get your thoughts on that. We're going back to the Oval. I mean, I know a lot of people were wondering what would it be like or when they would go back to it. Now they know on the 30th anniversary of the Brickyard 400. Your thoughts
Oh,
on
I
it, and then also the street course coming back.
Oh, I love it. I am a fan. We have our fourth crown jewel back. I think that because this next gen cars races so well at these bigger tracks, I think it's going to put on a great show. I know it's still a bit of a one groove racetrack, but I think they're going to put on a great race, and I think because it's the 30th anniversary, it has the potential to be an all timer. And then with Chicago, I'm glad they're back. I mean, it turned into a great race. I know the rain certainly had a lot to do with it because they were on the rain tires for so long, and single file restarts, and the race gets cut down by 25 laps because of darkness. But honestly, that course raced a lot better than I think anybody expected, and there was a lot more passing zones than anybody expected, and it remained reasonably orderly too. So looking forward to that again, because I think you could make an argument that the Chicago race this year was one of the best races of the year. So super glad we're going back there, super glad that we're hitting that market again. It was a huge hit. The ratings were great on TV, and it was packed.
Yep. All right. After Indy, as Nathan mentioned, we will have a 2-week Olympic break. To obviously, of course, NBC will have coverage of the 2024 Olympics out in Paris. So obviously everybody will be focused on that. And when we return from that, Richmond, August 11th, we will head back there, USA. Then we will head to Michigan on August 18th, a couple weeks back because of the break there. But now this is another point of conversation. Daytona is still in August, but it is not the cutoff race anymore. That is now Darlington because of the Olympic break. I know this caused a lot of angst as well, but we'll go ahead and why don't you talk about that? And might as well talk about the one that starts the playoffs with Atlanta. I know that got a lot of talk as well.
Yeah, I mean, so with the Daytona Darlington thing, NASCAR kind of had no choice. They had to make a sacrifice either way. They could make Daytona the regular season finale and move Darlington out of its traditional Labor Day spot, or they could move Daytona out of being the exciting regular season finale and continue to have Darlington Labor Day weekend. And they obviously chose the latter. I would have rather they moved Darlington. I love what Daytona does to end the regular season, like just having that urgency and the fact that anybody can win the final race of the regular season, but then also leading into the fact that they move Atlanta into the playoffs. I also don't think that they want Atlanta to follow Daytona in both races this year, and then also end the regular season and start the playoffs with another drafting track. So I think they elected to instead split Darlington. Or have Atlanta and Daytona split with Darlington in between. Excuse me. If they continue to make Atlanta the playoff opener, I don't know. Maybe Daytona becomes permanent as the second to last race of the regular season. I just can't see a scenario where they're going to want Atlanta to follow Daytona twice on the schedule. And then also, drivers I don't think are going to be on board for ending the regular season and starting the playoffs at the drafting track. But we have a lot more unknowns in the playoffs this year, that's for sure.
Yeah. Would you like to tell everybody where we go after Atlanta?
Watkins Glen, baby. Watkins
Okay.
Glen.
Okay, I know you're a fellow New Yorker. You don't live that far away. Of course, Watkins Glen is in the I'll start with the reminder. Atlanta starts the playoffs this year as we just talked about, and then they head to Watkins Glen. You don't live too far away from there. What when I know when you first heard this, what was your reaction to it?
Yeah, I mean Watkins Glen is basically just down the road for me. I mean I'm like 3 towns over from Watkins Glen. Like I've lived in this area my whole life, so I think from a racing perspective and a locals perspective, it's awesome that Watkins Glen is in the playoffs. Right, super super cool. Weather should still be pretty solid there by what's the second or third week of September. That's awesome. I had started to hear rumblings of this happening um, at Watkins Glen weekend this past year. That's when I'd really start to hear this idea gain momentum of moving Watkins Glen to the playoffs. And now it's official. It's happening. So that's cool. It's gonna be really weird though. Have like started the playoffs off though with a drafting track and then a road course. But I think it's gonna make for an exciting first round. The big question with Watkins Glen though is the grandstands have sold out there for the last 8 years. Camping has sold out there for the last 3 years. This is the first time that Watkins Glen has been out of the Finger Lakes tourism season. It's the first time it has been when kids are back in school in this area. So are people going to show up as to the degree that they have in these, historically at Watkins Glen? That'll, remain to be seen. We have 50 weeks basically until we figure that out, or 49 weeks, or whenever it is. But that is the big question. Will as many fans come? I think there'll still be a good crowd. I don't know if they'll be able to sell it out, though, just because it's a little bit later in the year. But I hope they do.
Yeah. All right. After Watkins Glen, Bristol follows that. That is the round of 16 cutoff race. By the way, I forgot to mention Bristol is also the cutoff race for the Xfinity playoffs. Forgot to mention that. So that returns to that, and then of course Kansas moves from the round of 16 to the round of 12, and then it's the same as this year when then Talladega, the Charlotte Roval, the round of 8 goes unchanged with Vegas, Homestead, and Martinsville, and the championship race at Phoenix. And that is your 2024 NASCAR Cup Series schedule. But overall,
Woohoo!
how would you rank the what are your thoughts about the Cup schedule and all three schedules really?
I don't mind them. Like I said, for Xfinity and trucks, I would have liked to find a way to keep Road America and Mid Ohio on, respectively. For Cup, I mean, I think the biggest question is the playoffs. I mean, I don't know if I like having two road courses and two drafting tracks in the playoffs, particularly the two drafting tracks. I can live with two road courses and one drafting track. I think two drafting tracks is a little overkill. I think that creates a little too much randomness. In a perfect world, if it was up to me, right? It's obviously not. If it was, I would have found a way to keep Darlington in the playoffs, keep Atlanta out, um, keep Watkins Glen as your road course race, but make Charlotte go back to the oval, so you have just one drafting track and one road course. But that would have been my ideal playoff schedule. Obviously, I don't. Not all of that was able to be accomplished. I think a lot because of the Olympic break. But overall, not a bad schedule. It's kind of funny though because with as long as we waited for this schedule to come out, I think everybody expected these big sweeping changes. And overall, not a ton of changes, just a lot of shuffle dates and one new racetrack. But I think it'll still be great, and I'm fully expecting all three series to put on great shows once again in 2024.
Absolutely. And there's still more shows to put on in 2023, and your coverage at track is not over yet. Where are you going to be going in a few weeks?
Yeah, plans to be at Martinsville. I'm looking forward to it. That'll be how I wrap up the year with the podium finish. So have to keep your eyes peeled for coverage from there. Otherwise, it's remote coverage as usual. So be sure to check out thepodiumfinish.net.
Sir. All right, Nathan, thanks so much for talking about the schedules, and we are probably will have you on sometime. Maybe I don't know, maybe during championship week or week to recap the year. I don't know. You'll be back on here again.
Sounds good. Thanks for having me as always.